hard time figuring out what to say when you're trying to reach out to your audience? This is an experience that's had by so many, and that's why we have Ben here today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, why this topic matters to him, and why it should matter to you. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Shauna. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why this topic is so important to you.
Absolutely. So, again, my name is Ben Guttmann. I wrote a book, which came out just a few months ago. I'm trying to find it here, called Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. It's just been a ton of fun working on this. But before I wrote this book, I ran a marketing agency for 10 years. I have also taught in the classroom as a marketing professor for 10 years. And in those two experiences, plus what my general day-to-day life as a consumer, a voter, a user of the world, you see the same challenges over and over, which is that people have something really important they want to say, really vital they want to get out there, connections they want to make, but they have a hard time doing it. They have a hard time making that connection, crafting that message that actually gets their point across. And that's what I tried to solve when I was writing this book.
I love that. And I love that the name is Simply Put, because it is what it is. You're leading by example so beautifully and bridging that world between marketing and just everyday communications, which is exactly what we're doing here, because you are never not marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive into that world of coming forward and just saying what you mean in a way that's easily understood. Where do we start?
It's funny you mentioned the title. I have joked that nobody should ever write this book again, because unless I got every single thing right with the title, the subtitle, the cover, the jacket, the this and that, then you shouldn't believe me, right? Like, so, and every time I talk about it, I have to be as clear as possible. Every time I write it about it, be as clear as possible. Otherwise, it's just evidence to the contrary of my ability to know what I'm talking about. So
no pressure.
Yeah. But so this is what happens when it comes to communication. If you distill everything down, there's basically two sides. We have a sender and we have a receiver, right? So the sender is the advertiser, the marketer. It could be an executive, it could be a teacher, it could be a politician, it could be anybody who is kind of in the driver's seat of the communication. And the receiver is on the other end of the line, right? So it's the buyer, the voter, the donor. And we're all both of these things, right? We go back and forth, within one conversation. We go back and forth throughout the day, but we kind of play by different rules when we're in each one of those spots. When we're receivers, we want something known as fluency in our messaging, in our communication. And we know the word fluency, right? To be fluent in English or Spanish or Mandarin, but where if you ask a cognitive scientist about the word fluency, well, they use that to describe how easy is it for you to take something from out in the world, stick it in your head, and make sense of it. And the easier that is, the less kind of sweat you have to shed, the less mental cycles you have to go through to understand something, a message, be it an email, a slogan, or a sales pitch. Well, the more likely we are to buy it, to trust it, to like it, all the things that we want to do when we're in the driver's seat as a communicator. And the inverse is also true, right? When something is not fluent, when something takes a long time for us to understand, really kind of makes us work for it, well, we don't like it, we don't trust it, we don't buy it. Again, all the things we don't want to do. So we want things to be fluent. There's a whole boatload of science that backs up that piece of the equation. But when we're senders, we're actually pulled in the opposite direction. It turns out that when you look internally and externally, we have all sorts of additive biases and complexity biases. That's pulling us in that direction. But also externally, we are pushed there by the demands of the marketplace, the resume, the stock market, the media cycle, our boss who needs to report to their boss, all of these things push us in the direction of adding more and more, which often pulls us in the opposite direction. So that's where this chasm is, right? We have these two sides where receivers want things simple, senders have a really hard time getting there, and that's where most stuff kind of falls in the middle.
Right, because there's just so much going on. And how the real question is then, how do you peel back the layers of that, the extra that you're receiving as the sender, in order to just transmit the message that's needed for the receiver? And that, we're not going to joke, we're not going to lie, that is hard. It requires a lot of introspection, and it requires a lot of understanding of the way the world works around you and around the receiver's world, to understand what exactly do we need to send and what do we not. It's like, it's kind of like minimalism in living.
Exactly. So what I've identified, it's hard, right? Our nature and our environment pushes us in this other direction. And so when I looked at this challenge and I said, okay, what is the science about how we can bring us closer to where the receiver needs us to be? I've identified 5 principles that we can use to kind of design our messaging in a way which is going to be most effective. And to my functional background is as a designer. Right. What a designer does is we arrange things in the world to solve a problem. Right. You deal with constraints. You deal with needs. You deal with competing desires from different parties and stakeholders. All of these things, help inform this part of the puzzle, which is how do we design something for simplicity?
Mhm.
So I'll go through them quickly, and then we can dive in if you want to talk about them. But the first one is beneficial. What does it matter to the receiver? What's in it for them, right? Kind of features versus benefits, that sales 101 type of stuff.
Yeah.
The second principle of a simple message is it's focused. Are you trying to say one thing or multiple things at once?
Right.
Is it one idea or 3 ideas in a trench coat, right? The third one is salient. Are you saying something that stands out from the noise? We hear and see thousands and thousands of messages on a daily basis. How do we do something that's a little bit different? How do we rise to somebody's attention? How do we get noticed? That's the salient piece. The fourth is empathetic. Are you speaking in the language that the audience understands, both in terms of the literal language and the words you're using, but also where they are kind of emotionally, where they are in terms of motivations, making sure that we meet them where they are and that we're on their turf.
Right.
And the fourth is minimal. Have you cut out everything you don't need and kept only what is necessary? And this one, you mentioned a little bit about kind of minimalism. It's not about it being the shortest message. It's not about being the smallest website, the shortest email. It's about the least amount of friction. Right? So how do you minimize the friction? How do you keep everything that's necessary but remove what isn't? And so it's not a checklist. It's not a step-by-step plan. But if you look at these 5 principles, the more you can activate on them, the better you're going to be in terms of if it's selling a bajillion units of your widgets, or if it's kind of convincing your boss to go with plan A versus plan B.
Absolutely. And I actually, it's funny you said that, because one of the things that I wrote down is that less is not always more.
Mm-hmm.
So just this idea that, yes, we want it to be clear, we want it to be simple, we want it to be concise and relatable to our ideal receiver, whether that is indeed your boss or a prospective client. But like you say, it doesn't necessarily mean fewer words or fewer ideas necessarily. Just the conciseness of it really kind of matters.
And this is one of those things that happened if you look from a design perspective. So I look to the world of user experience a lot when we talk about the minimal piece. So when you look at classical kind of user experience examples of different checkout flows, right? Let's say you're trying to book a hotel room or trying to book a flight. Theoretically, you could book a flight all on one page, right? It could be one giant page. But if you go to the well-designed websites, if it's Google Flights or whatever, about booking a flight, you go through multiple pages and you think, well, multiple pages, that doesn't feel like it's simpler than having one page, right? But we often will kind of react poorly, will kind of bristle at the idea of seeing one giant page full of a lot of stuff. Meanwhile, if we see a bunch of smaller pages of asking us the easy things, that actually isn't simpler. It's a more minimal framework than it is to kind of smush it all together. I like, this is a bit of an aside, but I like to say whenever I'm talking to designers that are having a hard time with this on their websites, or people who are cramming everything on one giant slide, which is that pixels are free, right? You go ahead, add some more white space, add some more pages, add some more slides. if that makes it easier for somebody to kind of go along this journey with you.
That's right. That's right. And truly, from a psychological standpoint, if you're going through these separate pages and you're completing the pages, everybody likes to check a box.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. So it's just that matter. Oh, I completed something, and they get that little shot of dopamine. You're keeping them going. So just from even just, you said, user experience, that internal, not just the external of seeing all that you need to do and filling out all the forms, but that internal user experience of being like, I did something. I'm that much closer to getting to where I want to be. And I was also thinking, as you were describing being a designer, of course, we're talking about in the digital space, but I'm also considering like in our physical space. Let's say you were an interior designer and you're actually creating a home for somebody. Minimalism, when people talk about that, oftentimes they think of these bare white walls, these very, very stark floors with box furniture, and it's very sterile, right? But when in reality, minimalism is just the idea that you're only keeping in your space what you need, and what you need. It doesn't necessarily mean like you physically need to eat and drink, but more so, this brings me joy. This brings my life meaning. So with that, you know that a minimal design in your home, if we want to make this tangible, can include pictures on the mantelpiece.
Mm-hmm.
It can include a couple of throw pillows. It can include these things that really make you feel at home.
It's it's not, again, it's not about the fewest number of bits of information. It's about everything you need, but only what you need, right? And that's the, and actually you're 100% right. I quote this in the book, is kind of the avatar of minimalism pop culture has been Marie Kondo for about a decade. Even if you look at the work that she does, which is a totally different space, right? We're talking about marketing. She's talking about home,
Right.
interior design, but it's about what sparks joy, right? What provides utility, and that's what we're looking at when it comes to when it comes to marketing. And there's a quote that I'm going to probably butcher if I when I pull it up, but sometimes like the repetition, the addition of words makes something easier to understand, it makes it more salient, right? It helps you with other things. And like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, right? Like that type of language is much more impactful than just saying tomorrow, right? And so these type of things are often, if you don't think about them, you just immediately kind of start whacking away at stuff, and you say, we don't need this word, we don't need that word, but that will come at the expense of the other parts of this equation, right? That will come at the expense of something talking about benefits. They'll come at the expense of something talking about being salient or being empathetic. And I lied a little bit when I said this wasn't a step-by-step plan. There's a reason why I put beneficial first and minimal last. Those two do have a particular order, which is that benefits are the most important piece, the thing we're most likely to forget, the thing that gets more and more difficult the further and further we get away from the kind of atomic part of the communication. The further we get away from the problem, the less we see what the needs are there. That gets harder, and that's fundamental. And then minimal at the end, because you can't really know what is necessary until you've thought about some of these other pieces.
Right. I mean, it's more of a roadmap. These are the things that you should be kind of thinking about first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And I was actually thinking about that when I was going through this, because that empathy piece really is an integral part of the minimal piece. And then I'm just working backwards here. That salient piece is really a part of that empathy piece, because you need to know what is really going to strike a chord with the receiver in order to understand what part of you is going to make you salient, what part of you is going to make you you can use it as a differentiator as you're showing up within your marketing and messaging. And then we rewind. You said the focus. 1 versus 3. How focused are we getting on these features and benefits, which was your first bit? And so one thing that I always preach to some of the people who I'm talking to is to focus on the benefits, not the features, in order to engage the rest of that. What can you speak towards within that construct?
So this is this is like marketing 101, sales
It
101
is.
stuff, but it is so frequently forgotten. So I tell my students this. I say, if you forget everything else you learned in this entire course, this entire degree, if you remember this one sentence, you're going to be ahead of most people in business and in marketing. And it's not even my sentence. It's from Theodore Levitt, who was a marketing professor at Harvard in the 60s. He said, people don't buy a quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole, right? People don't want a quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole. They don't want the thing. They want what the thing does for them. And I would even argue you can go further than that. They don't even want the hole. They want the picture on the wall, right? They don't even want the picture on the wall. They want the sense of love and belonging that they're getting because of seeing their family every time. So these these little adages here, they help you kind of reframe what is something that's very kind of baseline and unmotivating about saying, well, this, this toothpaste has mint flavor. That's nice, right? Toothpaste, that's
I
a
prefer
feature.
that over other things.
Yeah, it's a feature, but I'm not buying it because it has mint flavor. You have to say, well, so what, right?
Yeah.
Mint flavor, so what? Well, that means I have fresh breath, right? Okay, that gets you from the feature to what I'll call the functional benefit, that first level of it. But I would actually say you got to go a little further than that. If you go and you say, well, so what? Again, to the functional benefit of having fresh breath. So why do I want fresh breath? Well, I want fresh breath so I can have a more successful date tonight, right? Okay, well, all of a sudden that starts to get to a deeper level a little bit. We'll call that the emotional benefit. And if you go down the line here, you say, okay, well, do I even want that? What do I want? You ask, so what again? And this can bring you down to that other list of 5 things we see on, every psychology presentation, every management textbook of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Say, well, so what about the mint flavor, the fresh breath, the successful date? Well, you want love and belonging, right? Or you want, your physiological needs or whatever it's going to be that you're going to tie that into. And then standing on that bedrock, when you get that low, you can turn around and say, okay, let's invest proportionally in our messaging in each one of these. And investing proportionally means depending on what your audience is, depending on what the circumstances. Sometimes you do want to talk more about features, but if you're in this persuasive kind of headline space, maybe you want to talk more about that love and belonging. You want to talk more about that fresh breath, because that will better align with what the receiver is actually interested in hearing and what problem they need to solve.
I love all of that. And you're making me think of a few things. The first one, a little bit fun. I don't know if anybody listens to Brad Paisley, but he has a song called Love Starts with a Toothbrush. It's a good one, and it might be a good example for this sort of concept. So look it up. I'm not going to sing it to you or anything, so don't hold your breath, but look it up. The second one I was thinking is just the complexity that can come with thinking about all these things, because keep in mind, we're talking about, okay, we're simplifying it, we're minimizing it. And then we go to the brass tacks, the bare bones, benefits over features. And already we're talking about the client journey. Already we're talking about psychographics versus demographics. Already we're talking about this interconnectivity within the different spheres of your marketing and how you're showing up. So now we don't have all day to dive into all of these or to give not just the marketing 101, but 102, 3, 4, 5. What would you like to share with regards to those potentially overwhelming to someone who's not in the space concepts, and how they can navigate that space to get to the core root of their messaging as quickly and efficiently as possible? And also, don't forget to remind them where they can connect with you and how they can integrate themselves into your world.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate that. So if I have kind of one takeaway for folks, it is that just as if you were sending a letter and you're responsible for the postage, you as the sender in any sort of communication are responsible for the metaphorical and literal cost of your message. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're getting heard, that you're meeting the receiver where they are. We all woke up today with lots of things that matter to us, but nobody had on their to-do list, I want to click some Instagram ads, I want to open some spam emails, I want to watch some YouTube ads. Nobody wanted to do that. You have to respect that truth and be humble in your marketing. So that's number one. And then number two, if you want to get in touch, if you want to learn more about this, I can encourage you, go grab my book, Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win, How to Design Them. available basically anywhere books are sold. You can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. Or just head on over to my site, benguttmann.com. It's not a very radio-friendly name. You have to put 2 T's and 2 N's in my last name. But if you go to benguttmann.com, you can grab a free chapter of the book and start there. You can find the links. You can sign up for my newsletter, which goes out every Tuesday. And feel free to shoot me an email. Hit me up on LinkedIn if you have any questions, and we'd love to hear from you.
Love it. Oh my goodness. And trust me, I've already read portions of this lovely book, and it is definitely something worth diving into. Oh my goodness. We're jumping all over the place today. There we go. Excellent. So yes, definitely go over there. Don't forget that the link is in the show notes, and that Ben is a very open and lovely, concise person who, if you reach out to him 100%, you're going to get your answers. You're going to dive into this world and have the resources available to you that you need. So check out the book, say hello to Ben, and don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, continue this dang conversation, because it is so important to understand your positioning in the world and how to spread your message in a way that is clear and concise and not taxing on you or the reader. So with that, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. We'll chat soon.